And can I get a thumbs up from the audience and participants if you are seeing our first ever convening of Atlanta principals up on the screen? Awesome, thanks so much. Well, again, thank you for taking some time out of your very busy schedules to join us today for this. This is our first ever convening of Atlanta principals. I'm sure you've all had opportunities to meet with each other and to collaborate as thought leaders across Atlanta, but this is our first time really getting a chance to be in this kind of space with all of you. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us for this conversation. My name is Joseph. I'm with TeachFX. I'll do a little bit more introductions later, but I want to kick it over to a member of my team, Riseo, who you might have met, to introduce our very special guest host today.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Riseo, and I'm on the partnerships team at TeachFX. I've been here for about 2 years. I'm a former science teacher, and I did stop by many of your schools, and it's great to see some familiar faces. But really, you're here today to hear a story of Continental Colony, and I'd love to introduce Dr. Kristen Horton, who I had the pleasure of meeting about a year ago at a conference, and we have been partners ever since. And she is amazing, and she's going to tell us a little bit about how she thinks about academic ownership and what she's been seeing at Continental Colony. And really, I want to make this conversational. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for all of us to engage with each other and learn and share. So I would, without further ado, thank you for our guest of honor, Dr. Horton.
Thank you, Riseo. Yes, Riseo mentioned, good afternoon, everyone. We met about a year ago, and we've always had concerns with academic ownership. But post-pandemic, when we saw that our students came back with a lot of gaps, we had a lot of hand-holding and not a lot of student talk or conversations in the classroom. So when I saw Riseo's presentation, I was like, this would be phenomenal for my teachers to be able to reflect just on the audio in their classroom. So academic ownership for us is basically students doing the heavy lifting, a lot of student conversation, and the teacher mostly as a facilitator of learning versus just the holder of all of the knowledge. So we witness growth at Continental, but we are still struggling to reach proficiency in a lot of areas. And so I think the biggest piece that we're missing is really students actually doing the work, having that productive struggle and those conversations around the work that they are engaged in. So it's been our focus for about 2 years now and before the pandemic. So we just thought this would be a great tool to really delve into that work and have teachers reflect on that academic ownership in their classrooms.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Horton. And I'll just give a quick introduction. My name is Joseph Hyun. I work on the partner success side of the house. I get the privilege and honor of getting to work and support Dr. Horton and Continental Colony and their staff. I got to visit just a little bit ago and got to see some of this work in action. And it really was incredible to see the way that your teachers, Dr. Horton, take this work so seriously and are looking actively for ways to be able to reflect and improve their craft. We want to make sure that everybody here who joined today gets an opportunity not just to learn from Dr. Horton and from the work that she's done, but also a chance to learn from each other. And I want to make sure we honor the expertise here in the room. Oops, sorry about that. So we're going to have a couple activities actually that I want to have us all engage in as educators, and to put on our student caps for a moment and to be able to participate in discourse and conversation and elevating our own voices and thoughts, much like we want our students to do. So we're going to do a quick icebreaker just to get you warmed up. You don't have to do too much talking quite yet, don't worry. But the question today, the prompt is, how do you define academic ownership? We heard a little bit of how Dr. Horton perceives it and the way that Continental Colony is looking at it, but at each of your sites, how would you define academic ownership? Now, the way that we're going to share this out, because we have a lot of folks, it's not going to be by asking everybody to share at once, but instead we have this tool that we're going to use called Jamboard. I believe Rachel's going to drop the link in chat for all of you to open up, but let me give you a quick preview of what that's going to look like. We're going to use it a couple times actually. So for this first one, the question is up on top. It says, how do you define academic ownership? And I'm going to ask us, it's kind of a virtual sticky note space. If we were all in a classroom, we'd give everybody a sticky note and then ask everybody to put their thoughts up on a wall. But today we're going to use this. There is a little sticky note icon here that looks like a square with some lines on it. Once you open up the link, and do we have the link in chat already, Rachel? Awesome. So once you open that up, go ahead and click that sticky note button, and this little window will come up, and type your response to this. Of course, take some time to reflect if you'd like to, but drop a sticky note, choose a color, and then after you put that in its place, you can actually move your sticky note around. So let's see if we can fill up this whole board. I'm going to set a timer for just, I don't know, I think 2 minutes should probably be good for everybody to have a little bit of time to reflect and add their thoughts here. So thanks so much, everybody. All right, Riseo, I'm going to turn it over to you to help us try to do some sense making here.
Yeah, so as I'm reading some of these responses, I see student agency, accountability, awareness of successes, responding to each other in their conversations, engaging, moving the work forward. So I'm seeing a lot of themes around students kind of owning their own learning in the classroom and owning the space in their education, and really feeling empowered to do that. I'd love to hear from a volunteer to share what you're thinking. What themes and similarities are you seeing? I'm going to pick on Dr. Frazier. Dr. Frazier, what kinds of themes are you seeing here?
How did I know you was going to do that? How did I just know? I just don't. But no, collectively, I was seeing the same things. You know, all of us do evaluations and so forth. So one of the things that popped in my head initially was just looking at standard 8 academically challenging environment. So moving those kids to the point where they are seeking answers and not always relying on the educator in the room to provide them the blueprint for doing things. And that's really when they own it, when they have gotten to the point where they can see something and it doesn't jump out to them automatically, but they're equipped with the tools to go and find those resources and information themselves.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Frazier. Anyone else want to add on to that?
I'll just share what I'm doing in the background, just really trying to call out some of the common themes that we're seeing here. Riseo, just like you were, I should have been doing this while you were identifying them, but really students being able to self-monitor and set their own goals and be accountable to their work. The ownership of, being empowered in their own learning, engaging in conversation. And then, doing the heavy lifting, not seeking all the support from the facilitator, from the teacher, but being able to do that on their own. So this was really meant just to kind of warm up our brains a little bit for all of us to be thinking about academic ownership, but it wouldn't be a workshop involving TeachFX without some conversation. And with a big group like this, it can be a little bit intimidating to unmute and address a room of 23 folks. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up breakout rooms here. I think we've got, with 24 participants, let's go with 8 breakout rooms. So we'll do groups of 3, but I want us to take it a little bit of a step further. So the most important part here is actually to be able to connect with fellow leaders in Atlanta and to be able to connect with each other and learn from each other. But I would love if we could actually look at these 2 prompts together. What are you currently seeing in your classrooms at your site? And then what are you trying to shift? And we're going to use Jamboard again, and that link will show up in the chat. This time around, what I'd like you to do is when you get into your breakout rooms, if you could actually assign one person or have one person volunteer to be the person on Post-its. And I would love if the ideas that are discussed and shared in breakout rooms, if the note taker could actually put a Post-it on either one of these 2 sides of this new Jamboard. Because what I would like to see is, as a group, collectively, are we seeing some of the same things in our classrooms? And of course, if you're seeing something unique, we want to hear your voice too. And then more importantly, what are the things that we're all trying to shift? And where are ways that we can support each other with some of that commonality? All right. So the 2 prompts, what are you seeing in your classrooms and what are you trying to shift? You're going to be in breakout rooms discussing this. We're going to actually give about 7 minutes so you can really dive in and get to know each other a little bit.
As a former teacher, I feel that I definitely struggled with trying to feel like I had control of my classroom, yet also allowing students to drive the classroom and lead the classroom, and knowing that they can do that, and that they're owning their learning and doing so. Let's see. Anyone else just want to volunteer and share anything that you heard in your group that was really powerful or that resonated?
I can speak. I was trying to not speak because I'm in the same room with Kristen and it's going to echo. But we talked about going into classrooms and the teacher basically being the sage on the stage and doing most of the talking and not giving students enough opportunity to share their voice and actually engage in the content orally. And trying to make sure we have teachers understand that whoever's doing most of the work is the one that's doing the learning. Whoever's doing all the talking is the only one that's learning. And so we've got to give kids an opportunity to speak and be heard in that classroom.
Thank you for sharing that. And you know, that's a really great segue into why we do what we do at TeachFX. A lot of our research or a lot of the work that we do is rooted in research that shows that, you know, teachers talk about 80% of the time in front of the classroom. And so, you know, there's a huge lever to drive change here. And academic ownership is one of the ways to do that. So now I'd love to kind of shift into hearing more about Continental's story and the cultural shift that Dr. Horton has shared about what she's seen happening since working with us. So Dr. Horton, I'd love to pass it to you and hear a little bit more about the different cultural shifts and the impact on academic ownership and how that's led to greater student engagement, a decrease in teacher talk at Continental Colony.
All right, thanks again, Rosario. So the vision was, like I stated before, to increase academic ownership and to have more conversations and equity of voice in every classroom. Because as we talked in our breakout room, a lot of the time when you come into the room, either that is heavy teacher talk, they're calling on the same students, you know, each time they ask a question, or it's kind of choral response. So we wanted to make a shift with our academic ownership and student engagement. An additional area that was a part of our vision was the impact on wait time. So really allowing students time to stop and think before you move on to someone else or before you take over. And so we've been doing some work around collaborative talk structures and just wait time period. So we can make sure students are actually thinking about what they're doing and not just waiting to be saved by someone in the room or by the teacher. So that was our high level vision.
Great. At this time, I would love to invite everyone here to share in the chat, either with a 1, 2, or 3, the kinds of shifts that you are focused on at your school site to see in classrooms. So 1 being a shift in coaching conversations. Maybe you're focused on a shift in teaching practice, or 3, a shift among how students show up in the classroom. So if you could all just drop a number in the chat with which one is resonating right now at your school site, that would be great. Fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of 2s in the chat. So a shift in teaching practice. Great. Wow, lots of 2s. And I also see a 1, but mostly 2s. So because I saw 1, let's start off with Dr. Horton. I'd love if you could share the shift you've seen in coaching conversations, and then we'll move into number 2, which is a shift in teaching practice. And if you could elaborate on that first one, that'd be great.
So the shift with coaching conversations before our leadership team, we each coach about 6 to 7 teachers apiece. And we would, get into the classrooms Monday through Friday, and then we would have conversations either after school or during planning. And it was just very difficult to kind of get those in throughout the week. You know how busy it gets. So then we shifted to, okay, during extended planning on Thursday and Friday, we're going to have our coaching conversation. So we have a 2-hour planning, and 30 minutes of it is your one-on-one with your teacher that you coach from that grade level. So we're spread across all grade levels. And so in those conversations, we've seen autonomy, because with TeachFX, the teacher chooses the goal. We definitely have some high leverage action steps we want the teacher to focus on. But when they're using TeachFX, we focus on the area they want to improve. Then the feedback. So based on what we're seeing in the classrooms, we can look at the timeline we see in TeachFX and to see if it's actually occurring. So I talked about actually getting to independent practice was a huge thing for us. And so looking at that timeline and seeing, do you see red across the top? And I'm not sure if Rosayo, you'll share that later. Red across the entire timeline. So the teacher talked the whole time. Or do you see some silence, or do you see group talk? Because independent, I'm trying to get our teachers to understand, it's just independent of you. They can still, talk to their peers, working on their own, but what are you seeing across your timeline? So we saw autonomy. So teachers are choosing that goal. The feedback they're getting, they're not only getting it from us, but during the week, they're getting it from TeachFX as well. And then teachers actually reflecting on what they're getting. So I kind of talked about this with Mr. Sally a few minutes ago, those teachers that you may not reach every week because they're your rock stars. And so you maybe have some struggling teachers that you see more often. They're still getting that feedback from TeachFX. So they're not, getting it directly from you. Eventually we will by the end of the week, but throughout the week, they can also get it from the data they're pulling after they record a lesson. So we've seen a huge shift in those coaching conversations around the teachers choosing that goal. So it's something that is internal and something they want to focus on. The feedback they're receiving from the app, I'm not telling them they're talking the whole 20 minutes, but they're actually seeing that they're talking the whole 20 minutes. And then actually reflecting, okay, I'm recording multiple times in the week. So am I getting better by the end of the week?
Great. Dr. Horton, can you share a little bit about what those coaching conversations look like now? Like what do teachers bring that data to those coaching conversations? How do you go through all the data?
So we always start off with just looking at student work. So we're focused on the student work from foundations or corrective reading. Those are our foundational skills programs. And then we look at the feedback from TeachFX. And then based on whatever the teacher's goal was, okay, did it get better? What can we shift? And then we move into a focus on our highest leverage action. And if we have time, writing out the steps for that and actually practicing that highest leverage action. So yeah, that's basically the rundown of the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, as everyone really is focused on number 2, which is looking at teaching practice, can you share a little bit about what that's looked like at Continental Colony then and then now as the year has progressed?
So, even after the pandemic and a lot of external factors, when we look at data, our data has not looked beautiful this year. And so right away, people start to name, or teachers start to name that, attendance, they don't come to school, or, I have a whole new classroom from the beginning of the year and so forth. So most recently, we started to show student data and then look at we do our walks in KickUp. So then we can see percentages for what we're looking for. And so most recently, we started to connect the two. Okay, this is what our map data shows. And then this is what KickUp is showing that we are doing or not doing. And then so looking at TeachFX to say, okay, if it's saying that we're not checking for understanding, we're looking at the school as a whole. Now let's delve into your individual report, and your coach is sitting right next to you. And let's look at if you checked for understanding. So looking at spots where you asked a question, and then after that question, you see blue. So you see students answering or talking. And it was eye-opening actually last week when one report, it had tons of questions, but it was like 60 questions. But then after each question, there was like a, it was still red. It was just still teachers talking. So teachers being able to actually reflect and see that, again, like I'm not telling you, but we talk about it. We show them our walkthrough reports to show what we see, but then for them to actually delve into the report and to reflect on their own practice. So looking at what's actually happening in your classroom versus, you know, sometimes we sit in PD and it's like a one size fits all, but I'm talking about teacher or student talk, teacher talk, but then they're able to delve into their own teaching practice and look at it on the spot to see what's actually happening.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, number 3, which is sharing a bit about the cultural shift you've seen in the classroom, you know, with the change in coaching conversations, with the change in shift in teaching practice, how is that actually showing up in the classroom with students?
So it's happening in the teachers that use the tool more often, because it's not like a mandate. Some of the recordings are, but the amount of times they record is up to them. So we're seeing those teachers that are recording more often, of course, they're seeing growth, right? They're releasing their students more often. They're more comfortable with our collaborative talk structures, and you see their students a lot more engaged. In those classrooms, we've seen student talk increase, especially in those teachers that are recording. I think, Joseph, you can correct me, 2 to 3 times more than others. We've seen an uptick up to 97%. And then, of course, your behavior management struggles. So those students that are those classrooms where the students are engaged in the conversation throughout the entire lesson, not just at the end, but at the beginning when the teacher is modeling, then they do have fewer behavior management struggles because the students are so engaged in what they're doing. They're able to actually do and not just sit and get. So those have been some shifts that we are seeing. And on our second grade team, most importantly, we discussed that. Like if you look at their map data, it matches what they're actually doing in the classroom with TeachFX period and just reflecting on their practice.
Thank you for sharing that. I would love to hear at this point if anyone has any questions or any questions for Dr. Horton or any questions for us, or would just like to add to the conversation.
Can I actually ask a question, Riseo, for all the participants?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with how much you've seen the actual, what like the TeachFX experience is like for a teacher. Could I see like maybe on a scale of 1 to 5, like how familiar are you with what TeachFX actually does for a teacher? 5 being like, oh yeah, we're already using it, or I've seen it before, and 1 means actually I have no idea what this is and would like to maybe see some of it. Could you put in chat kind of where you're at between 1 and 5? If it's easier, you could just put up on a hand with a number of fingers how familiar you are with what TeachFX is and how it works for a teacher. Okay, so seeing some 3s and some 4s. Yeah, for those who are kind of like in the 3s and not, or have some experience with it, or would like to potentially see more, and if people are not putting in the chat that they actually are wondering what the experience is like for a teacher, I thought I would share some of the teacher voices at Continental Colony so that maybe we could kind of learn from their perspectives. Let me just get my screen set up here. One moment.
I'm sorry, again, Mr. Gomillion, did you want to add anything? Did I leave anything out?
Well, I could just piggyback on some of the things that you were saying about the success that we've had at school. And since it's not something that we mandate, because, you know, we didn't want to put, you know, another thing on the teacher's plate. And we didn't want it to feel like it was something punitive, but, you know, we have experienced, like Dr. Horton was saying, pockets of success, especially with our secondary team, because it's just a, I don't know, it forces teachers almost to just be more reflective in their approach and and ask themselves, how did they impact their day, right? How did they impact their students, and what adjustments can be made. And we're hoping that it's going to be a trickle down effect. You know, when we can compare data of teachers who heavily use it to compare it to teachers who don't, you know, hopefully we can start something that will eventually move throughout the school. Like I said, we didn't want to make it mandatory, but as we move along, we're hoping that 100% of our staff can jump on, because we are seeing growth.
Yeah, Mr. Gomillion and Dr. Horton, I feel like the data does say a lot about the work that your teachers are doing and things that we can celebrate. So I am going to play this video because I think it actually has some of that data in here, along with some of the perspectives of the teachers who used this tool this year.
Really simple. You just set the duration for how long you want it to be and press start. By the time you're done, you just name it and it's done. Real quick and easy, not a lot of hassle, and you really don't have to worry about the techie stuff. It's real 1, 2, 3, go.
For the past 3 years, we've really been working on academic ownership and really allowing the students to do the heavy lifting. And so I thought this would be a great way to actually get teachers to reflect, not just what I'm coming to say to you or what the coaches are saying to you, but actually you're actually hearing it and then reflecting on that information.
It's the reflection piece that resonates with me. So I think that this tool is going to help to make instruction much more purposeful and more effective. We didn't make it where it was another thing for them to do. This is something that is not going to be used as a gotcha. It's not going to be used as an evaluative tool. It's just primarily used for support.
Kind of hard to, in hindsight, talk about what you think went well in your lesson, what didn't. You don't remember everything, so it's nice to just have a record of everything that happened and then to have it broken down. I think that helps a lot in figuring out, where I was talking about what, where the kids were talking, what really prompted their conversations, what really prompted, sort of interclass dialogue.
Just looking at what the kids are doing as far as the recording, I can see how much wait time they need. We were talking about that in the training just now. And you can see how long are you taking to actually answer the question.
It's for you. It's a tool that can help you to improve your teaching. It also gives you the good things that you're doing, so it kind of assures you of the things that you already are doing that are correct, and then it helps you to improve on those things that you need to work on.
So it's just really helped me to really analyze my own practices. If something is not working, I'm going to try something different.
I like the fact that you are able to look at what we're doing and merging the two versus, okay, this is a PD that we have that we want to share with your school. But I send her what we're doing and she automatically comes in and makes it even better. So that makes my life a lot easier, as well as the coaches and the teachers.
During the session today, she shared a new strategy that it really connected with me, with several of my students who are just almost there with the phonics skill and didn't quite catch it. When we come back tomorrow, I'm already going to try it.
All right. I'd love to hear reflections from the video, things that you heard from teachers, things that you heard from administration at Continental Colony that stuck out to you.
I would definitely say the reflection for me would be just seeing the teachers feeling so positive and so confident and excited about the support and the feedback. I think that was the biggest reflection for me. It was very genuine.
Thank you for sharing.
If I could echo on what Benita stated, I think it was really just refreshing to see teachers didn't look at it as something that to get you, but really looking to stretch them and make them uncomfortable. My ask for Continental Colony is, what is your focus for next year? What is your goal to increase? Are you allowing these teachers to be champion and cheerleaders for this platform? And how do you look to expand next year?
Yeah, so we are going to continue to use the app next year. Like you said, those teachers that are we're actually creating a professional development like model where we have cohorts of teachers. So those teachers in cohort 1 will definitely be those teachers that are seeing results, in observation data, TeachFX, student achievement data, and kind of leading the way for everyone else. We most recently aligning like student data, our observation data, and then having them look at their TeachFX data has been really impactful. So I think we'll start the year doing that instead of just looking at one piece of data. Well, let's look at what students are doing, what we're seeing in classrooms, and then actually reviewing your TeachFX data to see how it pertains to you, and bringing that TeachFX data back up every time we're training. So then they're reflecting on what's actually happening in their classroom. And it's not, oh, I don't need to be here because I know this. Well, let's look at what you're doing and how you can make it better. So I think having those 3 pieces, it has been huge for us and will continue to be.
Thank you.
That was a great question, Ms. Ford. What other questions do we have?
Well, I know for me, and I've been multitasking. I know the saying is when you multitask, you don't do anything well. Perhaps that is me. But I was listening and I heard some great things happening here. I'm a high school principal, and I know Betsy Bachman is on this call as well. And we know that high school people are very territorial and feel like they just need to teach to the test and close the door and whatever I do. And so I would love to, as I'm thinking like, hey, who could I get to be a cheerleader and identify people and perhaps find a way to incentivize them. That's one way of doing it. That's one way I'm thinking. But for me, the biggest question that's always in my mind is like, what does this cost? So that's my big question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So to answer your question, and this might not be the question you want, but it really depends on the scope of the implementation. So we price roughly based on the size of your school. So high schools tend to be much bigger. So you're probably looking at a cost of anywhere from 20 to 30K. Now that includes free access to the app for all of your teachers, as well as the professional learning workshops. And that's really where the magic happens, because we have an excellent professional learning team and partner success team, and they help to facilitate the reflection that is needed to leverage the data and make actionable change. And actually, I noticed that Rakaya is on the call. And then of course, Joseph, our head of partner success, is our co-host, and they might be able to speak more to the workshops and the kinds of themes and the kinds of focus that those workshops have to move the needle on teacher practice. I don't know if either of you want to share, or maybe Dr. Horton can share.
It might be a little loud here. I'm at a conference, but I was going to make a joke, Ms. Ford, about high school teachers being the worst and not wanting to change. Whereas elementary school teachers are more willing to try all the things because they're teaching across content areas, and it becomes more specialized and specific as they get older. Joseph is a former high school math teacher, so I always make that joke about that. But yeah, we are really big believers in starting with a strong cohort of teachers, like Rosario mentioned, where you can build capacity. You have teachers who are really interested in reflecting, who are not afraid to record. And then as those teachers share their reflections about TeachFX and the things that it's working and how it's helping them shift their practice, then we can kind of build on the partnership and invite other teachers to use the product as well. So I'm always a big believer in start with a strong cohort. You can start small and build from there.
Did that answer your question, Ms. Ford?
It did, but it then prompted me to ask more deeper questions. I most probably would need a one-on-one session.
Yeah, let's talk more about what you're thinking, and what we could do is we can design. The beautiful thing about TeachFX is we can design like customized implementation plans that work best for your particular needs and focus.
Okay.
So we can do that together and get really creative.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. Like at the beginning of the year last year, I actually sent our PD calendar, what we were going to focus on for first semester. And Sharon basically built a plan for us. And then she came into classrooms and saw some things going on. Then she was like, oh, I think we should do this. And so she literally like, I mean, she's amazing. The strategy she taught my teachers, she redid our whole writing for K-2 based on what she saw. And it's not like, okay, this is a program we have, we want to share it with you. It's what are you doing and how can we help support the work you're doing? And she just, I mean, she's phenomenal. She's an ELA guru. And so I've learned so much from her.
Is she high school? I need someone like yeah, high school English. Yeah. I want to have a follow-up conversation with some people on here as well.
Sure. I would like to just celebrate our team. We try to be as flexible as we can. And Dr. Horn, what you shared really is a big philosophy for us. Like we do not want to be one more thing. And when you lead with the technology or the app, some teachers can feel that way. And especially like I resonate so much with high school teachers who have so much going on and are very protective of their time. And so when you can give things that are valuable, like, hey, like thinking about wait time or thinking about a great open-ended question that can really help your students actually feel more connected to the content that your teachers are teaching. Like those are the kinds of wins that we want our teachers to experience as soon as possible. And yeah, we do have an app and we have technology that will support them in that journey. But yeah, looking forward to connecting with you further and having those conversations. I think we're saying we've got about 5 minutes. Did you want to take a few more questions here?
Yeah, I would love to. So I know we have 5 minutes left. I want to open it up to these questions. And I just want to ask, you know, what's kind of sparked, what's your thinking after this conversation? What is shifting in your mind and what have you learned from, you know, your colleagues? And I'll just open it up and feel free to unmute. There are some questions and prompts on the screen too. All right, well, hopefully, you know, this conversation has been of value to you. I do want to honor your time and I would love to hopefully continue the conversation with you all, you know, as the year goes on. So if you are interested in learning more about TeachFX or what it could look like at your school and your particular site, as Ms. Ford has figured out, you know, everyone's needs are different. Especially high school versus elementary. So we're happy to talk with you and figure out what makes the most sense at your school. If you'd like, you can just scan the QR code up here and it'll take you directly to my meeting link. And with that, I'll just see if there are any other questions. I'd like to thank Dr. Horton again and Mr. Gomillion for joining today and being fantastic hosts. And thank you, Joseph, as well. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week.